Someone drops a map. No one bends to pick it up. The room smells like hot metal and burned paper. Voices overlap, then fall apart. Commands arrive too late to matter. A clock keeps ticking. Too loud. Too fast. A man stares at a wall where something used to hang. Another grips a receiver that no longer answers. No one asks what comes next. Footsteps echo down a corridor. Then stop. Then start again, running in the opposite direction. A switch is flipped. Nothing happens. Another switch follows, still nothing. The air grows heavier, as if the space itself is holding its breath. Outside, something massive moves. Not close enough to see. Too close to ignore. Papers are shoved into bags. Then dumped out again. Hands tremble not from fear, but from understanding. There will be no evacuation. There will be no negotiation. No flags raised, no terms discussed. Only silence. The kind that settles right before a decision that cannot be reversed. Somewhere far above this room, leaders have already chosen. The message just hasn't arrived yet. And when it does, it won't ask for consent. What kind of empire reaches the end and decides extinction is safer than surrender? The year marked the beginning of the end, though few recognized it at the time. The war had stretched longer than planned, draining resources and patience on every side. What once felt inevitable, victory, dominance, permanence, now felt fragile. The empire at the center of this story still appeared formidable on paper. Its borders were vast, its military experienced, its leadership unchallenged in public. But behind official statements, the situation was deteriorating. Enemy forces were advancing methodically, targeting supply routes instead of cities. Rather than dramatic battles, they focused on pressure, slow, continuous, exhausting. Each advance forced the empire to make smaller, quieter compromises. The location tied to this story was critical, not because of its population but because of what passed through it. Information, orders, materials that could not be replaced once lost. It was a hinge point. If it failed, everything connected to it would weaken. Reports from the region grew inconsistent. One day calm, the next warnings filled with cautious language. Words like temporary, uncertain, and under review appeared more frequently. Civilians nearby were relocated under vague explanations. Some never received official notices at all. Transportation records were altered, maps quietly updated. Fear did not spread loudly, it spread privately. Within military ranks, rumors replaced certainty. Soldiers wondered why reinforcements never arrived. Officers questioned orders that seemed designed to delay rather than defend. Leadership insisted the situation was manageable. Allies were reassured. Press briefings remained controlled and optimistic. But something else was happening, something unspoken. The empire was no longer planning for survival. It was planning for containment. And whatever was being protected was deemed too valuable, too dangerous, or too revealing to be captured. The soldiers stationed here were shaped by repetition. Their days began before sunrise and ended long after fatigue set in. Training emphasized endurance over comfort, obedience over curiosity. They learned to move without hesitation, to speak only when required, to accept orders without context. Mistakes were not shouted, they were recorded. Every routine was precise, weapons checks at the same hour, patrols along routes that never changed. Guards posted at doors that never opened for them. They were told the assignment mattered, but never why. Personal connections were discouraged. Letters home were delayed or returned without explanation. Questions about the location were met with silence. Yet despite the restrictions, bonds formed quietly. Shared meals, shared exhaustion, shared glances when something felt wrong but could not be acknowledged. Emotion was controlled, not absent. Fear was managed. Loyalty was cultivated carefully, reinforced through discipline and consequence. Above all, they were taught one principle. Failure was unacceptable. Capture was unthinkable. Whatever happened here, surrender was not part of the doctrine. The first sign was the radio. A scheduled transmission failed to arrive. No alert followed, just a blank space where a voice should have been. Then patrols returned early, not reporting threats, just unease, sounds that couldn't be placed, movements that didn't match known units. Lights flickered more often, backup systems activated without explanation, logs were updated then rewritten. Messages from command arrived out of order. Some contradicted earlier instructions. Others were marked urgent, yet contained nothing specific. Silence became noticeable. Areas that were usually busy grew still. Doors once guarded were left unattended. Equipment was moved without record. No one explained anything. No one asked. Tension built slowly, like pressure beneath ice. It began without warning. Not an explosion. Not an attack. Just motion. Systems activated simultaneously, overwhelming those meant to monitor them. Alarms overlapped, canceling each other out. Orders arrived too quickly to follow. People moved instinctively, not strategically. Footsteps echoed, doors sealed, corridors filled with confusion. Visibility dropped as power fluctuated. Some tried to communicate. Others waited for commands that never came. Then one sound cut through everything. A low, sustained rumble. It wasn't external. It was coming from within. And as it grew louder, voices disappeared. One by one, systems went dark. Not destroyed. Disabled. The last recorded sound was not a scream. It was breathing. Then nothing. The response began faster than the explanations. Within hours, units arrived that had not been mentioned in any prior orders. Their vehicles carried no markings. Their ranks were unfamiliar to local commanders. They did not ask for briefings. They brought their own. The perimeter was sealed quietly. No announcement, no public warning. Roads leading toward the location were redirected under routine pretexts. Maps were adjusted, coordinates blurred. Search teams moved in layers. Outer sectors first, then inner corridors, then spaces that had never officially existed. They expected wreckage. They found absence. Equipment remained where it had last been handled, weapons secured, doors intact, personal items untouched. There were no signs of resistance, evacuation, or struggle. Whatever had happened had left the environment disturbingly orderly. Investigators documented everything, then documented it again. Timelines became the first problem. According to command logs, the incident began after final transmissions ended. According to internal system records, several automated processes activated minutes earlier. According to surviving personnel elsewhere, strange alerts had appeared even before that. None of the clocks agreed. Interrogations followed, conducted separately, repeated multiple times. Soldiers were asked to recount identical moments in exact detail. Any inconsistency, no matter how small, was flagged. Some witnesses were told they remembered events incorrectly. Others were informed they had imagined details. A few were thanked, dismissed, and reassigned indefinitely. Official reports struggled to define the incident. Language shifted constantly. Early drafts used terms like failure and breach. Later versions replaced them with anomaly and loss of contact. Entire paragraphs disappeared between revisions. Search operations continued for days, then weeks. Specialized teams scanned underground sections, sealed chambers, and deep access corridors. Sensors detected nothing unusual, no heat signatures, no movement, no biological traces beyond what should have been there. Still, the searches did not stop. At the same time, records began to thin. Personnel rosters were shortened, unit numbers adjusted, references to specific posts were replaced with generalized labels, maintenance logs were archived under unrelated categories. Requests for clarification were denied, not aggressively but politely, redirected, delayed. Command briefings grew shorter. The Empire released a statement describing a strategic consolidation and praised the professionalism of those involved. No names were mentioned, no location specified. The message implied order, control, and continuity. Privately, confusion remained absolute. Some investigators questioned why recovery teams were never instructed to retrieve certain materials. Others noticed sealed containers moved off-site without documentation. A few pointed out that the search parameters excluded entire sections, areas that had been critical just days earlier. Those observations were never included in final summaries. Eventually, the investigation reached an ending without a conclusion. Search teams were withdrawn, access was restricted, surveillance remained, but only to ensure nothing else surfaced. Files related to the incident were classified under multiple designations, each limiting access in a different way. Cross-referencing became impossible. Even knowing which questions to ask required clearance few possessed. And those who did stopped asking. What remained was not an answer, but a controlled silence, a version of events reduced to technical language and administrative closure. The Empire did not claim success. It did not admit failure. It simply moved forward, as if nothing had been lost at all. When official explanations fail, theories take their place. In this case, they emerged quietly, inside closed rooms, personal notes, and conversations never meant to be recorded. None were endorsed. None were disproven. Each existed in the space left behind by missing facts. The first theory centers on deliberate erasure. According to this view, the incident was not an accident or a failure, but a controlled decision. Faced with the certainty of capture, leadership allegedly authorized a final measure, one designed to leave nothing of strategic value behind. Not territory, not personnel, not information. Supporters of this theory point to the absence of evacuation orders and the speed of classification afterward. They argue that what looks like chaos was actually precision disguised as confusion. But this theory collapses under one question. If destruction was planned, why were so many systems left intact? Why preserve structures, records, and equipment while people vanished? The second theory suggests internal collapse. Not sabotage, not attack, but a cascading failure, multiple systems pushed beyond tolerance, collapsing simultaneously under stress. Communication overload, power redistribution, automated processes reacting to one another without human intervention. This explanation appeals to engineers and analysts. It requires no conspiracy, only pressure, exhaustion, and timing. Yet internal reviews found no single point of failure, no overload markers, no damage consistent with system-wide collapse. Most troubling of all, safeguards designed to prevent such scenarios never activated. Which leads to the third theory, containment of something unseen. According to fragments of testimony and partially redacted files, the location may have housed materials or information deemed too dangerous to recover. Not weapons in the traditional sense, but knowledge, data, or processes that could alter the balance of power if exposed. Under this theory, the incident was not meant to stop an enemy, but to prevent discovery. Those who believe this point to sealed transport logs and unexplained exclusions in search operations. Certain areas were never examined. Certain containers were removed without inventory. However, no surviving documents describe what was being contained. No witnesses can agree on its nature, and every file that might explain it has been either destroyed or sealed indefinitely. The fourth theory is the most unsettling and the least discussed. It proposes external influence without confrontation. Not invasion, not assault, but pressure applied indirectly. Psychological, technological, or strategic manipulation that forced leadership into a decision they believed was their own. Proponents note the absence of enemy claims, no celebration, no acknowledgement, just silence. If this theory holds any truth, it raises a chilling possibility that the empire did not fall by force, but was guided towards self-destruction. Yet without evidence, this theory remains speculation. No intercepted communications, no definitive signatures, nothing that can be proven. Only outcomes. What unites all these theories is what they lack: resolution. Key witnesses were reassigned or disappeared from records. Interviews ended abruptly. Some individuals later denied ever participating in investigations they were documented as leading. Entire archives remain classified under overlapping security categories, ensuring no single authority can access them completely. Truth in this case was not disproven. It was fragmented. Each theory explains part of the story and contradicts another. Each raises new questions while answering none fully. And perhaps that was the intention all along. Because in the absence of certainty, responsibility fades, and an empire that chose destruction over surrender ensured one final victory. No one would ever know exactly why. The silence endured, not the silence of absence, but the silence of deliberate omission. Whatever occurred, it was never meant to be explained. Records were altered, files were hidden, memories were questioned. Witnesses vanished quietly or were reassigned to distant posts. Time itself seemed enlisted to obscure the truth. Histories remember triumphs, battles, conquests, names carved into stone. But they forget decisions made in shadows, choices intended to erase themselves. The empire survived in name, yet lost more than territory or soldiers. It lost certainty, it lost control, and it lost the ability to speak honestly about what had happened. Some suggest the truth was too dangerous, too destabilizing, or too shameful to reveal. Others whisper that knowledge of the incident could change the way power, obedience, and survival are understood forever. No conclusion was ever recorded, no narrative sanctioned. Instead, the story was left unfinished, threads hanging in classified corridors, in testimonies that contradict one another, in archives stripped of context. What remains for us is speculation, the fragments, the gaps, the chilling awareness that a decision was made, one that no one alive can fully explain. And so we are left with a question that refuses closure. What was so perilous, so decisive, that an empire chose destruction over surrender? The answer is hidden, locked behind doors no longer accessible, in files that no eye may read. Perhaps it will never be found, perhaps it is not meant to be. Or perhaps the moment of revelation waits quietly in the same place we have yet to look. What do you think happened? Comment below with your theory. Because the story does not end here, not until someone dares to uncover the truth.